right, everybody. So it's 3 minutes past the hour of 11 o'clock, and it's time for Exploring Buddhist Concepts right here on New Era TT Radio. It's NET Radio, okay? And this is where we are joined by Kasi Senghor, and Kasi is our moderator in between this session. So, Kasi, good morning to you. How are you doing? Right, you were muted, Kasi. All right, Kasi, are you hearing me now? Okay. Oh, I think I realize what is going on there. I haven't seen Cassie directly as yet. All right, I think Gordon, you are there.
This is Graham here, Sir Charles.
Yeah, right.
Are
I
you,
said Gordon. All
are
right,
you
so
hearing me?
yes, no problem. Is Cassie joining us today, or is it that you are taking over the program today?
Well, he had asked me to talk on a subject, but I'm surprised to not see him here.
Yeah. Well,
But anyway, I
yeah,
am
but you're here,
happy.
so yeah,
I'm
you
happy if
can
you
go ahead.
wish to talk on it anyway. And
Maybe he will join us as we go along.
wherever he is, I'm sure he will join us. All right. Well, thank you, Sir Charles, for having me on your show. And good morning to all your listeners. Is my audio okay? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you perfect, actually. Very,
That's
very good.
great. All right. Well, Cassie had asked me if, within the context of his exploring of Buddhist concepts, I would talk on a subject. And so I agreed to, and I want to talk this morning on something called bodhicitta. I'm going to begin with a little background and then explain what bodhicitta is. And hopefully, there may be some time at the end for a few questions if any of your listeners have. So to begin, I think that the starting point of a spiritual path, any spiritual path, it begins with the understanding that we can transform ourselves. Innate qualities that we have, like loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and our ability to help ourselves and others can actually be cultivated. And that is what I think all the great religious practices are designed to do. And so seeing that is a starting point, and then we engage in whatever spiritual practice we choose, having seen it. Um, and we realize that besides whatever outer actions we may take to improve our life, there's also some inner work that we can do. And in particular, we can work on our mind to change the way we experience ourselves and the way we experience the world we live in. And putting that in Buddhist terms, each of us has the potential, we say, to become a Buddha who is an enlightened being. And we can become that by fully developing or fully awakening the natural qualities and abilities that we all have inside of us. These are not things we have to cultivate from the outside. They're here. We just have to uncover them. Many of the problems that we run into in life, we can deal with, we can put right, but there are always going to be some that we cannot fix, no matter how hard we try. They're beyond our control. It's a feature of life. And I think all the great spiritual masters of the past, including the Buddha, have faced that question that I guess in the end confronts all of us, which is there anything that we can do about the suffering inherent in life? How do we handle that? The things that we can't change. But if we can see that the major part of the difficulty and a key element of the suffering that we experience, if we can see that it is due to the way we look at the thing and the way we react to it, whatever it is, then we can also see that if somehow we could transform or shift the way we see the thing or react to it, then our actual experience of it could change. So I guess in all the great spiritual traditions, the understanding that they give us, the practices that they have, these are all methods by which I think in the end we try and change our experience of events or circumstances which cause us suffering. And so changing how we perceive them is key to dealing with them. So to our Buddhist practice, this our the beginning of our spiritual practice happens when we glimpse the possibility of this transformation and we take it a step further. Having glimpsed the possibility, we're now ready to look for ways to achieve it and to work towards it. And our deciding to make this effort, really, it's a life changing thing. It's a profound directional shift in our lives at the point that we make our decision, and it changes the whole purpose of our life. And when we do that in the Buddhist tradition, it's called taking refuge. That's a major decision to embark on a Buddhist path. Uh, we call we say we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which is the possibility of enlightenment, all the teachings left behind by the enlightened one, and the group of fellow practitioners that we train with. And taking refuge is really a defining act of a Buddhist. It marks a point at which we technically not only become a Buddhist, but also the whole practice that unfolds from that point. Now, bodhicitta, which is what I wanted to talk about today, that's a Sanskrit word, and it literally means mind of awakening. And we can think of that as a natural extension to taking refuge, to that decision to embark on Buddhist training. You know, taking refuge means deciding to work towards fulfilling our own potential and to transform our own experience to become free from this suffering I've been talking about. But developing bodhicitta takes us a stage further. It expands that beyond simply ourselves. It expands to include all other beings. So, in fact, it's a kind of great compassion, which at the same time is combined with both understanding and wisdom. You know, compassion generally means wishing, say, that a being or beings can be free from suffering. But bodhicitta is that same wish, but now layered on top of that is an understanding of the possibility of it actually happening and the means by which we can transform that suffering. So it's a stage beyond simple compassion. And there are two aspects to it. There's a raw compassion aspect, and there is a wisdom aspect, which we call relative and ultimate bodhicitta. And we need to work on both of those. We need to become compassionate beings, but we also need to have the wisdom to train ourselves in how best to apply that compassion. And taken together, it's like two wings of a bird. You know, if you have one and you don't have the other, then you're not going to fly. You need to develop both at the same time. So let me talk first about the compassionate side of things, which we call relative bodhicitta. We describe that as a great compassion, and we say that it is limitless in four ways, and we call these four ways the four immeasurables. The first immeasurable is a wish that all suffering, without exception, may be fully extinguished, so that no trace of it remains. Secondly, we're not talking about all the suffering for ourselves or just one person or a few people, but we're talking about the suffering of all sentient beings. And when we say sentient beings, we're not just talking about human beings. We're talking about all life, all beings that have feelings. so animals as well. The third, immeasurable, not just that all sentient beings have no suffering, but also that they may attain, let's say, unlimited perfect well being or peace or freedom. So, beyond suffering, we want them to be completely at peace. And the fourth immeasurable is that we don't just want this to happen for a small period of time or happen now, but we want it to happen forever. So it's a huge wish. There's really no limit to this aspiration, and there's no inequality or impartiality or partiality. We're not saying we want it to happen to these people, but not these people, or we want it to happen now, but not next year. It's a universal desire for the end of suffering for all beings for all time and the achievement of complete peace. So it's a huge aspiration to have, and to base one's spiritual training on that is, I'm sure your listeners will appreciate, it's a large undertaking. So in our tradition, somebody who makes this vow, who undertakes this sense of purpose, we call them bodhisattva. And that's the term we use. Someone who has the heart to work towards enlightenment, ultimate freedom, not just for themselves, but for all beings. So again, that's a big, big, big aspiration, and we have to start by accepting that no, we don't, we can't just do that. We can't just flick a switch and do it. You know, the fact that I have taken vows, bodhisattva vows, it doesn't mean I've become a bodhisattva. It only means that I've taken a promise, I've made a commitment saying that I would like to become a bodhisattva and I would like to start to work on the bodhisattva path. I'm not suddenly a saint, completely free of my own suffering, my anger, my selfishness. You know, things just don't happen like that. So, how we do it is we start by trying to work in this direction little by little, in the hopes that the more we work in that direction, the stronger it will come. It's like exercising a muscle. So, we begin by first generating some loving kindness, for example, and you know that lovely little chant that Cassie plays towards the end of this program with that beautiful voice singing, "May I be happy, may others be happy, may they be at peace." That's an example of something that generates the loving kindness we're talking about. So, if we do that, it starts to allow our attitude towards ourselves and to others to become a little softer, to become a little more open. And we try and have this spirit of kindness and helpfulness towards everybody we encounter. And even if we're unable to help, at least we don't bear them any ill will. We see that they are fighting their own challenges, and we wish the best for them to deal with their problems and attain all the good things that they desire. And we do what we can. What we actually manage to accomplish depends, of course, on our time, on our resources, on how our lives are structured. But the important thing here is it's not necessarily what we do to help that's the most important aspect. It's actually the intention, the underlying intention to do it. And that is regarded as the most important thing in our tradition because that becomes a basis for all the actions that we do from the time that we get up in the morning to when we go to bed at night. That becomes an undercurrent to how we live our lives moment to moment. If we can be doing things that help others, help ourselves and others, great. If not, the fact that the underlying intention is there is really the important thing. So so that's Well, before I go on, it's important to understand that practicing this kind of compassion, it doesn't mean just trying to please people. The first thing you will learn is you can never please people. They always want some more. But it is trying to be helpful and to benefit others and to improve matters if you can. And when seen with a degree of wisdom, you you find out very quickly that trying to do the best for others doesn't necessarily mean just laying over and doing everything they want you to do. It's not actually like that. We call it skillful means. We do what we think is skillful to help them, but there's a lot of stuff that they may expect that's not skillful. And another point, while I'm on the topic, that we should be clear about is that this practice of compassion is also, it's not dependent on whether or not these people are close to us, whether or not we like them, even. Uh, you may think that it's impossible to be compassionate towards all beings because, well, you don't know them or you can't like them. And it's a different thing, how do I like people that have been harming others? Your last caller in those last few minutes talking about the horrible things that the state of Israel have been doing to the Palestinian people. How can you be compassionate? You can be compassionate to the Palestinians, but how do you be compassionate to Israel or their leaders? Well, this is a larger compassion. This is inviting you to understand how misdirected and misguided those people are and how much they are creating their own suffering. And the compassion comes from that place. I don't like them, I don't admire them, but I don't wish them harm. And I wish that they would change, they would see the harm that they're causing others, and that they could find peace and freedom from the destructive states of mind that are driving them. And even if you don't know people, everyone, it's possible to do it for everyone, even those who have done terrible things to others, because they in their own way are suffering, and by getting out of suffering, they will stop the destruction that they are causing and the harm that they're doing to other people. So it's that kind of compassion. It's extremely wide ranging. And the more we become accustomed to doing this, is the more our ability to do it improves. It doesn't start off like that the day we take our vows. It starts off with nothing but a vow, and then bit by bit, we do our practices to try and get this to become an undercurrent in our lives. And then once we've done that, we find it starts to settle in as a way of living. And we become stronger, we become better at it. That's how the practice unfolds. The more we practice compassion and goodwill, the easier it becomes. So that's how we begin. We start by working at whatever level we can, and we don't expect too much of ourselves, and we don't judge ourselves to begin with. But we acknowledge the shortcomings, especially our selfishness, which is something I'm going to talk a little bit more on in just a bit. And we develop a desire to have our positive qualities come to the fore. Uh, that desire to help people, and we do that because we can see that doing it is good for us. It's good for others, and you find that when you do it, there is a feeling that comes back to you that is really, really rewarding. So much so that even though we label it as an unselfish action towards others, in fact, it can result in so much good feelings for yourself that you can almost consider it a selfish thing. So that is the compassionate aspect of bodhicitta. And there is the other aspect of it, which is the wisdom aspect, ultimate bodhicitta. So that's the other wing of the bird, as I said in my analogy a little while ago. We need both wings to fly. So, with the compassion, we need to develop the wisdom. And The wisdom we're talking about here, this ultimate wisdom, it's not just knowledge in the sense of collecting information, which as human beings we do all our lives. We stuff our heads with information. But the knowledge I'm talking about is different. It's deeper than that. It's really an experience of the way that things really are. An experience of ultimate truth, you can call it. It's understanding, not just in an intellectual way, not just with your head, but your heart. Deeply experiencing and realizing the way things are, the way we are, the way other people are, what we are. It means, to be short, it means awakening to your true nature. That's how we describe it, and awakening completely. And that is actually the experience that happened to the person we call the Buddha. Through meditative practices and through deep introspection, he came to realize what he was and the way things were. He came to experience his true nature, and with that came the enlightenment that transformed him into this being we call the Buddha. So we actively have to work. We're not going to become a Buddha in this life or immediately. But we actually we have to actively work in this direction. And wisdom we find and compassion, yes, two wings of the bird, but very closely linked. Because as long as we lack one, then the other one cannot work for us. If we lack wisdom, our compassion is incomplete. We may wish to help, but our wish to help may not be really motivated by compassion for the other person, but it may be motivated by our own need to feel good, our own need to feel important. In a way, that's all right, but that's acting without wisdom. And if we don't have full wisdom, that kind of weakness is inevitable because it's part of the human condition. It's natural. We are all selfish in the sense that we all preoccupied most of the day with doing things to improve our lot and maybe to improve the lot of people close to us. But a lot of our actions are self serving because that's what we do as human beings. That's how we survive. We're biologically programmed to spend an awful lot of time trying to make our own personal lives more comfortable and better, to make more money, to get the things we want, to get rid of the things we don't want. It's what we are as humans. So if I say that I'm not selfish, I'm not being honest with myself. I'm deceiving myself. But wisdom changes it. Um, if we don't have the wisdom, selfishness or our pure animal nature as human beings is what predominates. But once we start to develop this wisdom, we reach a place where we can begin to rise above it. So I think it's important to understand, to acknowledge that as human beings, or what the Buddhists actually call samsaric beings, that we have these weaknesses and that we are very self serving ultimately. That's okay. We may have some compassion and kindness, but also this aspect of our nature exists. The first step is to see it, and the second step for us is to accept it. When I can fully accept that this is how I am, and understand that actually this is how everybody is, then I'm starting to be honest and realistic. And I'm starting to understand the true nature of life. And then I'm not going to be so shocked when people behave in a way that, I don't like because they're looking out for themselves. That's just the way life is. And we need to see it. We need to accept it. And we need to not expect too much from ourselves and from other people. That's the starting of wisdom. Our our teacher in our tradition, Ringu Tulku Rinpoche, has a lovely quote where he's talking about religion in general, and he says that he expresses a belief that the necessity to overcome self-centeredness is probably the central message of all major world religions, and that's a very interesting thought. Um, he thinks that people who are thought of as holy, if you can think of anyone in your own tradition or other traditions that you think of as holy, uh, what do they have in common? Well, the characteristics of unselfishness and generosity are probably there in the most holy people that you know, because these are people that have been able to transcend this looking after myself thing that so much of us have, and they're able to spend their lives then giving to others. And that's a feature of all great spiritual teachers, that they have overcome this through wisdom. So the ability to transcend the self-centeredness that I'm talking about, which comes from the wisdom of knowing ourselves and knowing who this thing I call I, me, is. That's really the most important practice in ultimate bodhicitta. That because that's so, you know, it's so important. As long as we're confused about who or what we are, as long as we're confused about the nature of existence, the nature of reality, how life is, we're going to have problems. We're going to continue to suffer. And if we have this exaggerated and distorted sense of self, this thing that we need to protect at all costs, we're going to be self-centered. We can't help it. Again, it's a biological thing programmed into us that we can only transcend through knowledge. So our way of reacting and behaving, which is usually from the point of view of me at the center of my world, me and other, I am here, you are there, I need to protect what I have. That's a it's a and I need to make sure that you don't get any of it. It's a confrontational state of mind. Everybody and everything surrounding me becomes either good or not good for me. It becomes my friend or my enemy, and we react. We react from this place. I want it, I don't want it. I run after it or I run away from it. I try to hold on to it. I try to push it away. If you stop and look and you realize just how much of our life and everyone's life operates on this basis, it's an uncomfortable thought, but you will see it once you start to look, and it's often a little humbling, I have to say, because the realization of it is a liberation, but it's not always a nice liberation, because it's not nice to see ourselves like that. But when we do, we start to realize that there's no need to react as we traditionally do. We don't need to react with fear against things we don't like, or attachment to things we do like. And once we start to move beyond that, it's like we wake up from a bad dream, because there's no longer any need to keep striving for the things I want to have, or the things I need to get out of my life. Once that is gone, then the genuine compassion for both ourselves and others, it arises by itself. It arises naturally. If I have nothing to fear and nothing to gain for myself, then I'm free to look at others and see how I can work for their benefit. If I don't need to worry so much about my own problems, then I'm free to help others with their problems. And that's the path that we are on. This is where the real compassion comes from. because it's coming out of a wisdom at this point. And then the wisdom and the compassion in union is the ideal that we work towards, and that's what we call bodhicitta. How do we achieve it? Well, as we've discussed, relative bodhicitta, which is the compassion that we've spoken about, that's something that we can begin to understand and gradually develop through practice, through reading the teachings that we have access to that speak about these things at length, and working on it day by day so that every day we become just a little bit stronger and a little more able to make this thing manifest right through our daily lives. The wisdom side, the ultimate bodhicitta, can also be developed by, again, accessing the teachings that are available to us that come from people that have traveled this path before, but also working on it day by day to increase our understanding and putting it into practice. And so it happens little bit by little bit, and ultimately over a lifetime, we hope to reach much deeper levels. And as a result, our lives become much less burdened, much more free from the suffering that we're talking about, and a joy creeps into our lives, primarily through the fact that we are now working on behalf of others much more so than we used to. So, since wisdom is the experience of knowing ourselves and discovering our true nature, it requires a kind of introspection. So, the critical part uh, of our practice in developing that, since it's an insight, or if you like, seeing in, which is what insight really means, seeing into the core of our beings. The path we use is the path of meditation. It's a word you would have heard in this program many times. It's a word I'm sure Kasi has alluded to, and he may have spoken about meditation on length. But it becomes a key tool for us to develop this introspection. And only through the introspection can the wisdom arise, and then coupled with the compassion, we achieve the state of bodhicitta, which is the end goal of our practice, if you like. So, with that, I think I will stop talking and see if there are any comments or questions. And thank you all for listening to me. So, Charles, over to you, or Cassie.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham. Well, Kasi is here with us. He's been here with us for a while now, also. So he's been listening. Kasi,
I see him coming and going on my feed. I'm not sure he's here at
I
the
think
moment.
he's doing something else, and I'm not paying attention to the actual feed of itself.
No, I'm looking at the feed and I'm not seeing him. But I will happily take a question if you have, or we
I
can wrap
don't
this up.
know.
Ah, he's back.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know what's happening to the channel. I have
yeah,
always
okay.
I've been
Yeah,
here
but I saw you there, and but you've been listening, right?
yes, I've been here since before Graham.
No, I saw when you came in. It's just that I did not. I think it was just I didn't put you up in the studio because I thought you were actually in the studio. I was actually thing, but yeah, but I know you've been listening, and so you can interact with Graham and people if you would like to ask a question or you have a comment on what you've been hearing. You can also call us at 281-1315.
Yeah, well, what I would like to say is that Graham has clarified so much about life and living because what the Buddha has taught us is not about life being suffering, but that there is suffering in life. And his mission was and is to bring an end to that suffering. And from what I have heard Graham say this morning there, it really pleases my heart to know that we are in a system called Buddhism that does exactly that, brings an end to suffering. Even though, as he says, and we know that this would not be an overnight thing, nor an over year thing, or we may have to, maybe we will have to live a few lives, or many more lives before before we become totally enlightened like the Buddha, did. Yeah, one thing I can assure is that if one is earnest with the study and practice, you can only find joy. There's no other way to describe what will happen when you begin to practice in earnest. Why? Because the things that the opposites then, which you encounter on a daily basis, the opposites, pain and pleasure and gain and loss and like and dislike and fame and disgrace and, any opposites you can think about. The fact that you can now be compassionate with yourself and gradually with others. And I'll just hark back to the examples that he used, true usage of what can we say about the Israelis? Very good example, as to the extent to which we train ourselves to be compassionate. And that can only bring joy to oneself, because you're doing a good deal, a real good deal, to change the world, put it. And the other wing called wisdom, that practice in itself, is about awareness, is about you knowing, well, look, whether it's pain or pleasure, what really matters is the awareness of it. So that by training, we gradually creep out of the idea that, oh boy, here it comes, I look like this, I'm going to cow, I'm going to get into a shell, I'm going to get upset. Now, all of these things can happen, What I'm saying here is not that it won't happen or that you now become a superhuman and that kind of thing. You could cow, you could get upset, you could argue, you could do what. But because now you are more aware of what you are doing, you become more adept at being both compassionate and wise. And if you are to carry the analogy further, you cannot fly into what people commonly call nirvana, which is the end of suffering. Which is the, let's call it the state that in which you are neither a state of equanimity, where you are neither clinging nor avoiding. You see, and I think that Graham did an excellent job in bringing that out. Hopefully next week I could expound on this a little more. And next week Thursday morning, and so that is where I will leave it from there. If there are other callers, yes. So Charles.
Yeah, Kasi. So So you're leaving it at this point for today, or you have other things you would like to add, or is there anything Graham would like to add?
Um,
Well,
I don't think so, except for the fact that the the practices we're talking about here, um, they are available to everybody. It really doesn't matter what spiritual tradition you come from. Um, it does not conflict with any of the spiritual traditions. These are things, you know, that can apply to everybody's life. Um, you don't have to take Buddhist vows to start making use of the teachings of the Buddha. He was a man. He was not a god. He simply saw to a level that most human beings never will, and then spent the rest of his life trying to tell us how to deal with this great problem of suffering. It's a method that is open to everybody, no matter their background or tradition. So that's the point I would like to leave you with, because I think many of your listeners may think, that that's nice, but it's for Buddhists. It's not for me, and it actually is for everybody, and it's not going to rock the boat at all with whatever spiritual tradition you adhere to. Thanks.
well, maybe at this point, Sir Charles, I can simply do a 3 minutes. I've been recommending
No
that we,
problem. Go ahead.
yeah, I've been recommending from the very beginning that I'm re-emphasized in, I think, in every talk that we have done, even after this morning, the essential nature of meditation. So that right now, if we are seated and we can sit upright, without having to lean on the back of the chair and so on. Whether we have on shoes or slippers or what have you, or even if we are barefooted or whatever, and we can feel the ground beneath us or the footwear that we are in, that begins a certain level of awareness. And if we can increase that awareness to the weight of the body on the chair, I'm assuming that we are seated, so that there's a certain weight on the chair. If we can bring our awareness to that, feel like if the body is sinking into the chair. We can also feel the arms on the legs, because the arms naturally fall on the legs, and we can feel that weight also. We can feel the pressure of the clothes that we are wearing on the skin. Bring our awareness to that also. We can feel the air around the face and around the arms, and we can bring our awareness to that. We can stretch our spine to the extent where the head, you can feel the head as though it's going up to the roof, passing the roof, going into the sky, and that the spine now becomes not too rigid, not too tight, but just right, you know. So we are in an upright position. There are other features to the posture, which is where the tongue is touching the top of the part, the palate, or the back of the top teeth, so to speak. That's where the tongue should be. And our eyes are cast downwards in a comfortable way. You're not staring at the earth, but a nice soft gaze, 45 degrees is normally recommended. A nice soft gaze downwards. And in this posture, we can begin now to sit um, in a relaxed the relaxed position that it provides and begin to meditate. How? Well, the first thing that the Buddha taught was breathing meditation. And in so doing, we begin to recognize that what we have been doing all our life, we can now bring a certain degree of awareness towards it. Which is to say that we can now say, hey, I'm breathing in and I know it. I'm breathing out and I know it. And we begin to do just that. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And then as we progress, maybe not today, but as we progress, we can change that to in, out, you know. Or later on in any practice, you can simply change it to in, out. But be careful, because remember that distraction is our normal, well, our default position. That we have been always distracted, that we have been distracting ourselves, and therefore distraction is going to come about. It's not maybe about it. You are going to be distracted. So what do we do? What do we do when we are distracted? From the time we recognize that there is distraction, that is a good sign. That otherwise, it's a sign that we are beginning to take note of what is happening. So the distraction, we can say that we are back in the meditation and come back now to breathing in and breathing out. We can use numbers. So when we breathe in, that's 1. When we breathe out, that's 2. In 3, out 4. Or we can breathe in another way where we say in, out, 1. And use the number 1 to drag with the out breath. So you're breathing in, 1. And with that 1, you have been breathing out. And you sit for about 5 minutes doing just that, remembering that distractions will come about. So don't get upset, don't get put to, don't try start telling yourself, but you know, I can't do the singing, I mean, look at what happening. I ain't getting further than 1. That's great. You know that you're not getting further than 1. And then you could reach 3. And then you could reach 5. And then you could reach 7. And maybe you want to go back to 1 when you reach 7. But if you can reach 10 and go back to 1, you do that. And bit by bit until you can reach 21 and then go back to 1. But this takes training, it takes patience, it takes compassion for yourself and for others. It takes wisdom, because you are not about to face something that maybe you have never done before, or that you have done before without understanding what the components of it are of doing this practice. What the components of doing this practice are. And that takes us now to our daily lives. When do we do this practice? You can choose your timing, morning and evening. You can do it at a certain time, morning and evening. But make sure that there is some consistency so that you can gauge over time if there is any difference. Even after what you have just done there, you can go aside afterwards by 12 noon. You may not want to miss the 12 o'clock news, but you can go aside go to the bathroom or just sit wherever you are. I'm thinking the bathroom if you're in the office or what have you. But wherever you are, you can just go outside and see how you feel at the end of it. Try and recall the guidelines you just received and so look and see what has happened at the end of it versus how you entered it. And we will be doing this continuously every week through the kind courtesy of Sir Charles and through uh, the knowledge and inspiration of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So once again, thank you, Graham. Thank you, Sir Charles, and have a good day and week, and everyone.
Thank you very much, Kasi. Thank you very much, Graham.
Thank you, Sir Charles. Thank you, Kasi.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease.